Hi everyone, welcome to Values. So today we're looking at Tonix Pharmaceuticals. Now this is a particularly interesting company around its cash holdings. It has about $140 million, but yet the market values this company at around $21 million in terms of its current share price today at 37 cents. Obviously we can see the pre-markets jumped up 31%, but even if you add 31% to that 21 million, you've got probably more about $27 million, which is still very minuscule compared to its cash holdings. So the biggest question, is there a catch? So if we go to the balance sheet says about 139,978,000. Nothing wrong with that. We look at liabilities, 13 million, so they don't really owe a lot of money. So really they do actually have a lot of cash. So what's wrong? Maybe just haven't had a breakthrough in a long time, and its stock's just been sold down very heavily. So if we go back to the history of this stock, in the past year it's just slid basically as far as it probably can go given the cash holding. So this thing is, in a way, it can be a free bet on a biotech company. If we look at the pipeline of things that they have going, they do have quite a few things going, and potentially maybe one of them could pay off. They just need one thing to work out really well and things could really set the stock alive. So if we look at the status of each one, so this one's a phase 3, and also they're doing a phase 2 as well. So you don't know how biotechs work. Firstly, they've basically got to do a phase 1, phase 2, and then phase 3 is usually the last trial that they have to do, and then after that they can go to the FDA and try to seek an approval for their treatment, and if it gets approved, then they can start selling it commercially. But before that, stocks can make massive moves, particularly around that situation where investors expect something to be approved, or they produce some breakthrough results that allow them to potentially apply to sell their product onto the market and make a lot of money. And hence why biotechs can be a hit or miss sometimes. When they don't have much going on, they burn a lot of cash. So that's the problem of this situation. Potentially they have a lot of programs going and they are burning through a lot of cash, and they've only got one phase 3 trial that's going on right now, or for phase 2 starting next year, and then they've got 3 other phase 2 kind of situations going on, 2 phase 1s and a lot of preclinical ones. So in that sense, it's going to take a bit more time, but they only need a good breakthrough, and potentially things could set this company alight, particularly at a valuation of $21 million. That's not very high. Of course, the pre-market's moving up fairly well, up 34% on an announcement that they just made that they had gained an exclusive license for potential therapeutics or preventative humanized antibody for basically COVID. So I don't know how good basically it is now to be putting so much effort into chasing a COVID antibody, because by the time they get through the trials and all that, could COVID have just ended by then? But it somehow seems to have gotten the market's attention, which has gotten my attention. So I guess it's, in a way, it's a good news announcement because it gets everyone's attention. But either way, it's not really why I'm paying that much attention to the stock. I'm paying so much attention to the stock because of that $140 million that's just sitting there in cash. I'd love, of course, I would have spent some of it, but remember, if you do this comparison, basically, end of December last year they had $178 million, and then basically end of September, after 9 months, they spent about $40 million. So they might spend another 10-15 before by the year end, and then that still leaves them with about $125 million. and then potentially next year they may burn another $50-60 million to achieve their milestones, but that would still leave them with another $60 million for the year after that, and with a market valuation of $21 million. In a sense, it's a free bet on a biotech company that potentially could achieve something, and that kind of works. That's not a bad bet in a sense, but of course it might take up your time. But if you're just in it for a trade, potentially things could go very nicely in terms of a trade, because right now the volume is behind the company. Of course, there's probably a lot of profit takers because this stock has been suppressed for quite a bit of time now. So if we look at the stock, it's been trading for in the mid 30s for a good few weeks now. So potentially you've got a lot of people holding stock of that pricing, or even people that bought at a higher price and then they just see this as a good opportunity to sell out. So that's one thing. The stock will need to consolidate before it heads any higher. Like I looked at the pre-market volume and it was around 7 million stock traded. If you look at the average stock traded for this company, it's about at 1.7 million volume. So to have 7 million shares traded before the market's even open, that shows some really good volume behind the stock. So there's something definitely interesting worth looking into with this company. And I just stumbled upon this article that's written by Zacks, when basically this guy called David Butts, and he's got a PhD. You can read through all the programs that they have going, but the one thing that just stood out to me anyway was that bottom part here where he writes for the conclusion that after accounting for the company's capital raises this quarter, our valuation now stands at $6 per share. So for a guy that has a PhD that probably knows a bit more than me in terms of what they're talking about, he sees it as being about $6 in value, which is a far cry to the current closing of the last closing trading day of 37 cents. Or even if we go to pre-market pricing of 48 cents, there's a far cry that, hey, potentially this company is undervalued, but of course they have to achieve something. So there's cash there, and that's kind of a bonus because the cash is there for them to use and try to achieve something, while the only thing that you really get asked of as an investor is your time. If potentially they achieve something within a reasonable amount of time, then of course it pays off. But of course, you could also, you could be, who knows how long you might be holding for, and you could have just invested into a different stock. But for me personally, I like to find opportunities. I like to evaluate these opportunities, and that's what keeps me going. Like, I like to look at these and decide, hey, is this actually worth looking at? And I thought this was a stock that's definitely worth looking into, particularly around its cash holdings, because it's like the risk is fairly reasonably low, since you're not looking at any dilution. Well, not that we know of. Potentially the company may want to raise more money. They may need to spend more money because they just took on 3 new antibodies that they need to test as well, and potentially they have to do more larger trials with their other kind of treatments, so then they might have a larger cash burn. But you hope the company actually was prudent enough to actually manage that appropriately. But at the current situation, at a company that's selling for just in the $21 million in terms of market value, or about 27 million if you want to take into pre-market value, it just seems like a real nice free bet on a company that potentially could pay off. But if they don't pay off, the value wouldn't drop that much more significantly. Like a company holding that much cash, they could just literally just buy themselves. Like, why doesn't the company just have a share buyback and just buy out a stock? So that's the one question as well. But of course, maybe they don't see that as their whole purpose of running this company. So that's one thing as well. But either way, I thought it was an interesting opportunity worth making a video on anyway. Yeah, so that's all I really wanted to say. Until then, good luck investing everyone, and if you got any comments or questions, post below, and I'll see you next time.